Hey, it's Doug DeVitri, host of the CoTrackPro podcast. And today we have an awesome guest, Matthew Carroll. He is the founder of Keystone Mediation based out of Indiana. He's taught law for Northwestern University, Aurora University. He's the president of the Indiana Association of Mediators. I think I got that right. Matthew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here today.
And you're a musician.
I am. Yes, I got a, doctorate in music from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I did a undergrad at Baldwin Wallace University outside of Cleveland, and then my master's and PhD at University of Michigan.
That's so awesome. Well, hopefully we can make some music here together. Talking about mediation. Mediation is something a lot of people don't know about. Let's start from the very beginning. Tell us like what mediation is, and but then let's get to the heart of why people should consider it before litigation.
Yeah, that's a great question. So mediation can be used as a wonderful way to try to resolve conflict. As simple as that. A mediator will help facilitate conversations. They're going to help kind of find out the meat of what's going on and help the parties try to resolve it on their own. And mediation is used in anywhere from contract disputes to neighbor disputes, to landlord-tenant disputes, divorce, which is primarily what I do. So there's a lot of ways. I mean, you hear it on the news a lot of times, even when there's a war. It's like, well, they met with mediators in Qatar. It's a neutral third party that doesn't have a stake in the race. But they are armed with a lot of tools in the tool belt to try to identify needs and interests of parties. You know, everybody has a position. Think about when you work for someone and you come in and you say, I would like a raise. And the boss says, well, we want you to take a pay cut. Those are positions, right? But there's a reason why you want a raise, and there's a reason why the company wants you to take a pay cut. And the mediator's job is to try to identify those areas, identify those reasons, kind of answer the why question. Why do you want the pay cut? Why do you want the raise? Because that expands the pie, right? It's a lot different when it's, I want you to take a pay cut. Well, why? Well, our earnings are down and yada, yada. You may end up finding creative solutions where both parties can work together to meet both sides' needs. An example of that is one time I was involved in contract negotiations, and the one side was like, well, we want you to take a pay cut. And the other side was like, well, we want a raise. And it's like, well, why do you want a raise? And it's like, well, you know, food is costing more, and it's costing more to park in the parking garage. And so we started identifying area like food and parking, and then we started tackling those individual subjects. Let's talk about parking. And it turned out the company was able to run a free advertisement for the parking garage in their program that's seen by 4,000 people every time they come and see a show. And in turn, the parking garage was able to give 50 free parking spots to the employees of the company. Now, that addressed the need of the people that wanted the raise because it was costing almost $30 to park every single time. Now that you're parking for free, that's equivalent to a raise. Then we started talking about food, and the company said, well, you know what? Why don't we start bringing in on some of the longer days? Why don't we start bringing in, we'll cater lunch. And then that addressed some of the food costs, which is equivalent to a raise. That cost the company nothing. Didn't cost the company hardly anything at all. They didn't end up having to pay a raise, but the employees felt like they got a raise. And that's kind of what a mediator will do. They'll help identify these subjects that you can kind of dig into to meet the needs and interests of both sides in hopes that that's going to help resolve the conflict.
Well, I think the one of the first things that people do is when they consider getting a divorce is that they have to hire an attorney, right? Which,
Yeah.
would always recommend, but Should somebody go to a mediator first to try to resolve these things?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's not a question I can answer. That's up to the people involved in the divorce. The biggest difference is that an attorney can provide legal advice. They can fight for you. They can represent your best interests. For certain people need someone to advocate for them. But most people that I work with anyway are capable of making educated decisions on their own. It's more that they just don't know the process. They don't know what's required, the paperwork, what the laws are, what the rules are. And so that is something that mediators can do. Mediators can give legal information. They just can't give legal advice. They can't advise people what to do. They can't advise, well, this is what I think you should do, or I would suggest you do this. You're just putting all the cards out on the table and letting the people make the educated decisions themselves. So it's a long answer to your question. Do I think people should go to a mediator first? I don't think it hurts by any means. It just depends on the person. But the longer answer to your question is that a lot of people don't know that mediation's even an option. They just see, what their friends did, what their parents did, what they see on TV, and that means I'm going to have to hire an attorney and fight for what's mine. But the key word there is fight. And the more you fight, the more money attorneys make, and the longer the process is. The popular misconception, I think, to mediation is that people come in and it's, kumbaya and everybody gets along. There's plenty of fights in here, and man, do I have some stories. But for the most part, I've got a lot of tools in the tool belt where I can kind of identify where that fight is coming from, right? It's often from fear because it's a big change. A lot of times, attorneys will tell you that they see their criminal clients at their best behavior and their divorce clients at their worst behavior. But there's a reason for that. It's because divorce is such a shock on the system that it's too much for the human brain to take. I mean, I don't know if you've ever moved before, but moving sucks. There's nothing good about moving. It's stressful. Something always breaks in the moving van. It's very difficult just moving. It's difficult not seeing your children every day of their little lives when you've seen them every day of their little lives, and now all of a sudden you're not. You're concerned about your finances. You're going from 2 incomes to 1, and how am I going to make ends meet? Where am I even going to put my head on the pillow at night? So it's too much for the human brain to comprehend. Where mediation can help with that is we usually do just little chunks at a time. If we do it in little chunks, change is a lot easier to accept if it's done incrementally and over time. But if I throw everything at you all at once and it's like, you got to move, you got to do this, you got to split your retirement funds, and it's like, you just geek out, right? Because it's just too much. And so that's where mediation can be a wonderful tool that people don't know about, is like, we're going to chip away at it little bits at a time so that it's not so overwhelming. Divorce is already hard emotionally. Let's not make the process difficult. Let's make the process as easy as possible. And it's also customizable, because a lot of people don't realize that, there are rules, there are laws, there are guidelines, but mediation allows you to kind of customize it to your family's needs, because not every family is a check the box kind of the family, right? So my family is going to be different than your family. And so I kind of tell people, when you create an agreement through mediation, it's kind of like a fingerprint. It's going to be unique to you and your family. And so that is one of the nice options about mediation. And the other thing too, and I'm rambling and I apologize, but one of the other things too is that when you go to court and you hire an attorney, every attorney will tell you that there are cases that they won that they thought they should have lost, and there are cases that they lost that they thought they should have won. And when you go to court, you're in the hands of a judge. And, when it comes to family law, there's a lot of gray area and there's a lot of flexibility and there's a lot of leeway that a judge can go. And judges are human beings and they do the best that they can with what's presented in front of them. But, what doesn't make sense to me, Doug, is why people are comfortable, all the things that I mentioned, the moving, the kids, the finances. Why are people comfortable going to court and letting a person who knows them the least make decisions for them? And then it becomes an order that you have to follow. To me, that doesn't make any sense. To me, it makes more sense to help facilitate a conversation. And yes, sometimes the conversation is hard, but I would rather let the two people that know their lives best, that know what kind of parents they are, that know their kids better than any judge ever will, because a judge probably won't ever even meet your kids. Why not let them make those decisions? It's their life. That doesn't make sense to me, because when a judge makes a ruling, one side usually wins and one side usually loses. And the person that loses is not going to be a happy person. And that's just going to lead to future conflict down the road, right? The minute somebody drops the kids off 15 minutes late, here comes the first contempt charge, right? And it's like, we call it the never-ending hamster wheel of litigation. And that's all because, in my opinion, and again, the system is the system, right? It is what it is. But the system, in my opinion, kind of sets up failure. They do their best. They really do. But at the end of the day, like, let's put these decisions in the hands of the people who have to live with them day in and day out. Like, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. That really hits home, and I wonder, for parents who are kind of considering this process, or they're confronted with the process, right? Because they need to go through mediation. What are some of the things that they can do to help prepare themselves, so they get I guess what they get what they want, not necessarily what they need, but they get what they want.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's very rare that everybody gets what they want, right? Compromise is usually needed. I usually say, if there's parts of your agreement that each of you don't like, then it's probably fair. If somebody walks out of a mediation and says, I got everything I want, then the other person's going to probably feel screwed. Now, there is a way to try to get a win-win, right? Let's try to find, and that's going to be identifying those needs that I talked about earlier. It's like, an example is, well, I want to keep the house. Okay, well, let's talk about the house. What is it about the house that's important to you? Well, we're in a really great school district and it's a very safe neighborhood and we've got great neighbors. Now, I, as a mediator, am trained to hear things differently. I'm hearing, okay, it's not about the house. It's about the school district. It's about safety. So we can start talking about that. Are there any other properties in the school district or even in your neighborhood that are available? Because it doesn't sound like it's about the house. It sounds like it's more about these other issues. And so if the other person says, well, I want to sell the house, and this person says, I want to keep the house, now we're changing the story. Now it's like, okay, well, if I can find a house in the same neighborhood, or at least somewhere close by that's in the same school district, I might be okay with that. Now, you're changing a bit from your original position. This person's saying, okay, now we're finding that compromise, right? And that's all from listening, that active listening that mediators have to do to identify what the true issue is, like what we're really hoping for. I mean, there's plenty of data that show that kids, especially younger kids, they struggle early on with change when they move out of the marital home, but long term, they actually do better. Because if one parent keeps the house, little kids think, well, mom and dad are eventually going to get back together because we're still living in the same house. So obviously mom or dad are eventually going to move back in. And when you move and you each get your own residence, that kind of lets the kids know that this is final. You know, it allows the kids to start processing their grief and everything they need to process quicker, you know, because there's enough data that shows that that clean break, it might suck in the short term, but in the long term, the kids actually do a lot better. And so that's like a lot of that information that people just don't know, right? They think, well, this is the only home the kids have ever known. It's comfortable. Yeah, that makes sense. Comfort's a real thing. Do you think it's possible that the kids will eventually get comfortable in a new home? Probably, right? So these are the types of conversations we have in mediation. When it comes to preparation, though, to your question, what do you do to prepare for mediation? You got to start getting all your finances in order. You got to figure out, okay, start getting statements. You know, what's the credit card look like? What's the retirement look like? What's the pension look like? The 401k, what's the value of the house? If they don't know, then how are we going to value the house? It doesn't matter how they value it as long as they agree on how they value it. If they don't agree on how to value it, well, then a lot of times the judge is going to order an appraisal. And so you know, as a newer mediator, this is one of the examples of mistakes that I learned is I had a couple that didn't agree on the value of the house. So I said, okay, sounds like you're going to need to get an appraisal to determine what the value is. So the husband went out and he got an appraisal, and the wife went out and she got an appraisal, and they came back and the two appraisals were about $40,000 off and we were right back to square one. Right? So it's like, well, that was a waste of time and money. And so I learned to talk to them now. It's like, okay, it sounds like the two of you want to get an appraisal. Who would you like to do the appraisal? Which appraiser do you want to choose? And we talk about, you know, what is it going to cost? And when do you think you can get it done by? And does the house need to get cleaned or prepared before the appraisal takes place? Now they're both buying into something as simple as an appraisal process. And because they're buying into it, they both agree like this is the best way to go. Then we get one appraisal instead of two different appraisals, and they agree, okay, this is the value of the house. So these are all the things that I've learned along the way to help clients prepare, but it's getting the finances in order. It's talking about what the legal process looks like. It might mean getting a therapist to help you through a very difficult time emotionally. There's a lot of ways that you can prepare yourself to be ready for this, because this is a huge life event. It's a huge life event that has so much impact on people, on children. And what I do for a living as a mediator is I'm causing systemic change. The old war model, the mom versus dad, right in the caption of the lawsuit, because a lot of people don't realize when you file for a divorce, you have to sue the other person. A lot of people don't even realize that. And it's like, holy cow, that's harsh. Yeah, it is harsh. Then you look at that caption, it's mom versus dad. And a lot of people don't realize this is all public record and the court is taking transcripts. And do you want your kids reading those transcripts one day? Do you want your kids reading all this stuff? Mediation is confidential. Everything that we talk about here stays here. The only thing that gets filed is the final agreement. And so like, this is a great way to hash it out, but also it's a great way to teach your kids, listen, sometimes relationships don't work out and there's a way that you can resolve it. You can either go to court and have World War III and blow up your finances and then eventually say to the kids one day, like, sorry, I can't pay for your college because I spent $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on my divorce. Or you can go to mediation and hash it out together and resolve it peacefully. Let the healing process start sooner. And you're teaching your kids a whole different way. Like, we love you so much that we did this together for your benefit. We don't want some stranger in a black robe telling us when we can and can't see you little guys. We want to make those decisions as parents. And that's a systemic change, because people, again, just don't know that this is an option.
It's absolutely wild, right? And I think that when people are even looking for representation, right, or they're going to represent themselves, mediation kind of seems like it's kind of right there in the middle, right, where you kind
It
of get
is.
you get a little bit of guidance, but you can still show up as yourself.
That's exactly right. You can still show up as yourself. Um, some people do need representation, anxiety, fear, depression. They can play Jedi mind tricks on people.
Mm.
And sometimes when it comes down to the wire and you have to make a decision, some people reach that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response. And a lot of times they'll freeze and be like, I can't make this decision. Those types of people may need an attorney, right? They're
Yeah.
going to need an attorney to help them, to advise them, to guide them, to make those decisions for them if need be. That's something a mediator can't do. But for the most part, you can even have an attorney, but still go to mediation. A lot of times if I have a client that I realize is reaching that kind of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response, I may say, hey, do you think you can have a consultation with an attorney? One of my co-professors at Northwestern, I love the way she explains it. She says it's good to have one in place, if not in play. Go get a consult. Go find out what your options are. And then if you need your attorney to come to mediation, trust me, you're going to want them here more than you're going to want them in the courtroom. I mean, you're definitely going to want them in the courtroom, but that's an arena. And when we're talking about an arena, we're talking about like a bullfight or some sort of contest. A divorce is not a contest.
Yeah. It just seems like it's counterproductive to supporting families and the community.
It
Each
can
one of
be.
us need tools. Attorneys need tools. Families need tools. Mediators need tools, right? What are some tools that you might use when working with a client to help facilitate some of these very complex decisions or processes, financials? What tools would you say are most useful to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. When it comes to process, I would say tools like a really good file management software is very important. Keeping you as the mediator kind of in line of what tasks need done, what you need to do as the mediator, what the clients need to do. Oftentimes, I will assign homework assignments like I need you to find out how much it costs you to insure the children on your health insurance, because that's often a factor when you're talking about child support. And a lot of times that's not broken down. It just comes out of your check and that's all you see on your check. But you don't get credit for your own health insurance, but you do get credit for the children's portion. So the nice thing about a file management software is I can assign a task to a client and it's just a checklist, right? And it's like, okay, as soon as I'm done with that, I can log into my portal and check off that I've done that. So that's an important tool. I use another tool called family law software, and that's a wonderful tool because it's very, very rare. I can count on one hand families that know 100% everything they have, it's a helpful tool for families to I can cast it right to the television. Everybody can look at it in the conference room, and there's your financial life all on one screen. And
Wow.
that's a helpful tool. And then we can use those tools to say, okay, now we can start moving things around and allocate. Now that we've identified what is marital, what's non-marital, now that we've decided that yes, this is the whole bucket, the whole kit and caboodle that's going to be divided. Now we can start moving things around to see how that's going to play out. And then we can talk about, is this going to meet your short-term needs? Is this going to meet your long-term needs? Because this is a big decision. Other tools are things like Zoom, right? I do about half my mediations are virtual now. And so Zoom is a very important tool. One thing that people have to be careful about, though, is that a lot of these new transcript tools we can't use as mediators because this is a confidential process. And although
Mm.
my notes can't be subpoenaed, nothing stops an attorney from subpoenaing Zoom or the company that I use to do transcripts to get that information. So mediators have to be very careful ethically, the tools that they do use, that they're not violating confidentiality. And then there's like the skills that we use, and that's going to be active listening. I'm listening differently than most people listen. I'm listening for adjectives. I'm listening for word stresses. I'm listening to find out people use words for a reason. And so I'm really hyper focused on the words people use, because I'm going to call out and say, I noticed that you stressed this word. And I'm curious, why did you stress that? There's a lot of tools that we use that are therapeutic, very similar to therapy, but it's completely different than therapy. It's applied differently. Therapy is going to unpack things in the past. Mediation is future focused. I tell people all the time, I'm hearing an old argument and it sounds like you're having a really difficult time moving forward until you resolve whatever it was that happened 5 years ago. I have the wrong diploma on the wall. If you want me to fix things that happened 5 years ago, I'm going to mess you up even more than you're already messed up. And you don't want me doing that. That's therapy. But we use a lot of therapeutic tools for that active listening. Reframing, I use reframing a lot. That's an important tool. That's when somebody says, like, listen, I think she's being a gold digger. I'm going to reframe that and say, so you have concerns you're being taken advantage of. So I'm not going to let those insults land. I'm going to model a different way of communicating. And sometimes humans are interesting humans are interesting species, because we really do pick up things fast. And a lot of times, if I model a different way to communicate, I will notice within a session or two that my clients are starting to change the way they communicate. And if that's going to help them and install some of these tools that they need as co-parents moving forward, then that's a win right there. Because what worked in the past for them obviously didn't work, or they wouldn't be sitting across from me, right? But as co-parents, if their children see them thriving as co-parents, a lot of people think, well, we're just going to stay together for the kids. What are you staying together for? What are you modeling to them? Because if you're modeling dysfunction, then when they go to choose a spouse, guess what they're going to pick? The same dysfunction. And then we're continuing generation after generation after generation, the same dysfunction. We're passing down the wrong skills. But if we see co-parents that are working really well together, children can thrive. They can absolutely thrive. I did a lecture one time, and an attorney stuck around to talk to me after, and he said, I love the way you frame that kids can thrive. And he said, I have a nephew who's going to Notre Dame in the fall, and he is a dynamite kid. He's class valedictorian. And he said, and I can honestly say he would not be a dynamite kid if his parents wouldn't have got divorced. And I said, that's such an interesting perspective, because I think parents are so afraid of what they're going to do to the kids, what impact this is going to have the kids. And it will have an impact, but it doesn't have to be all bad. It can actually be good if we're getting rid of the bad habits and start working on new ways of communicating, new ways of managing things. I'm a big data person, and it's something like 85% of mediated agreements never go back to court.
Wow.
Yeah, because they bought into the process. They had a say. It's their agreement. They came up with the rules. It's the exact opposite. And a lot of judges will tell you that we have a lot of repeat customers. And that's because it's been adjudicated and it's been imposed upon them. You lose all autonomy in court, because now a judge is going to impose a ruling on you. And so it's almost like 20% of adjudicated orders or don't come back. It's like 80% do come back. So it's almost complete opposite. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Because nobody likes to be told what to do. Everybody wants to say, hey, these are my kids. This is my house. This is my retirement. I don't want a judge telling me I have to liquidate everything. That sucks. I'm earning 18% on one of my retirement funds and you're telling me I have to liquidate half of it? Like, screw you. It makes sense why it's the complete opposite. But if you have a mediated agreement where they worked it out themselves, it's a lot more durable.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Can you tell me some resources that you have, or maybe your website that people can check out to learn a little bit more about your process? Because it's my understanding that you can do this not just Indiana, Illinois, but because you're virtual now, you can do it anywhere.
Yeah, for the most part, I can mediate just about anywhere. Every state has different rules. Um, the way the rules are, like Indiana is very specific. Indiana, you're able to get divorced without even going to court through mediation. It's actually one of the fastest ways. Indiana is one of 3 states that allow non-attorney mediators to draft legal documents and submit them to the court. It's a very convenient way of getting divorced in Indiana. Illinois is a little bit different. Illinois, no mediator, even if you're a licensed attorney, is allowed to draft legal documents because you're not in the role of an attorney, right? And so it's a little bit different, but it's the process stays the same. It's just the end result differs a little bit. But people can go to my website, keystonemediation.com. They can find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so that's probably the best way to find. I do a little bit more direct to consumer stuff on Facebook, and I do a little bit more professional networking on LinkedIn. But that's a good way to kind of learn what I do. I'm passionate about it. I mean, I've done this now for about 6 years. Out of all the mediations I've ever had, I've only had 4 people litigate where they said, this isn't for me. I'd rather go fight it out in court. Somebody said I should start advertising that I have a 99% settlement rate. That's not what it's about for me. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, it doesn't mean I'm good at what I do. It means the process works. I believe in it so much that's why I teach it at Northwestern. That's why I teach it at Aurora. That's why I'm the president of the Indiana Association of Mediators, because more people need to know about it. And so this is my way of giving back. The one thing that I chuckle at is that attorneys, my clients, I'll say to them, there's a reason why a lot of my attorney friends are driving around Range Rovers and I have a dent in the side of my Nissan. I'm not in it for making mucho dollars, right? I'm in it to help people. And if I can help people not destroy their family, not destroy their finances. I mean, we all know people that have had those nightmare divorces that go on for 2 or 3 years and they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you have to wonder why. You just wonder why. Why? Sometimes it's personality disorders, and that they're probably not the perfect mediation clients. Sometimes there are extenuating circumstances like intimate partner violence or domestic violence, or child abuse. But for the most part, I mean, it's like 95% of everybody else kind of fits in to being mediatable. And it's if I can get them to come here first, I still want them to get legal advice. I'm an attorney friendly mediator because I can't give legal advice. But not everybody needs it. Not everybody needs it. And everybody's different. And so, but I train a lot of attorneys. I train judicial officers. It's great to see the light bulb go off. It's great to see, like, I've been doing something a certain way for a really long time, and I'm going to take that hat off, and I'm going to put this hat on. And I tell people, like, my class is hard. Our class at Northwestern is very difficult because the very first day I say, how many people are right-handed, how many people are left-handed? I'll say, put your pen in the other hand. I want you to write on your tablet, this is going to be a hard week, because that's what I'm going to be asking you to do. I'm going to be asking you to use your opposite hand all week because you're so used to doing something one way that now we're reprogramming the brain this week. We're totally reprogramming. This is not law. This is not therapy. It's its own profession. Mediation's its own thing. And it can be such a wonderful, helpful tool to so many people. Think of the contract disputes, or think about the parents and the schools with special education plans because the schools don't want to follow them. Imagine if you had a mediator come with you and mediate that conversation. That conversation is going to look a lot different. There's so many wonderful ways that mediation can be used. It's just that people need to know about it.
Well, people will know about that from watching this episode or listening to it on Spotify. Matthew, you've been a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate you going into this very complex topic deeply. Thank you for being part of the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Doug. I'm just so appreciative of you to help get the word out, and also for everything that you're doing on your end to help make our lives easier and the processes go quicker. And so thank you for everything that you're doing to help us out and supporting us in the background. So thank you for all that you're doing.